All right, welcome back. Well, today has been an eventful day in Tianjin, China, where the second and the final day of the SCO Summit unfolded. The day began with visuals that showed Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and Chinese President Xi Jinping interacting and sharing a laugh as the day's proceedings kicked off. In visuals that have since been pored over and dissected, the three leaders shared a light moment on the sidelines of the summit. The day proceeded with the signing of the Tianjin Declaration signed by the member countries. In a major move, the SCO condemned the Pahalgam terror attack and spoke out against cross-border terrorism. We then had Prime Minister Modi and President Putin exiting the summit together to conduct their bilateral meeting, which is where our focus lies. The two leaders exchanged warm greetings, after which enduring India-Russia ties were reaffirmed. Prime Minister Modi stated that India and Russia have always stood shoulder to shoulder, even in the most difficult situations. He also affirmed that India and Russia's energy ties were strengthening, as he stated that he eagerly awaited the Russian president's visit to India in December. Well, the two leaders also discussed the Russia-Ukraine war, with India pushing for peace in the region. Well, we have someone special to talk about this with. Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary of India, is joining us on the program. Ambassador Sibal, appreciate you taking out the time, sir, and speaking with us. Well, India and Russia have, been hand in glove ever since we got independence. Right from our defense dependence on Russia, and to the friendship that India extended to Russia when really nobody wanted to be friends with Russia in light of the Cold War. It's been a good ride. But things have changed in the past. Russia has also started to be dependent on China, and Russia has also fomented this relationship with China. Does this complicate our relationship with Russia in any which way?
Not directly, certainly not. If you reverse the logic, Russia or Russian commentators could say that India has strengthened its ties with the United States, and that complicates Russia's ties with India. Russia has never, to my knowledge, and when I was ambassador there, I had direct knowledge of this, never objected to India strengthening its ties with the United States, because Russia, given an opportunity, would like to normalize ties with the United States. It's the United States that has this Russia fixation, and they have been trying to strategically corner Russia with NATO extensions and all that. Let's not get into that. Now, if Russia has become closer to China, it is because Russia has been under such pressure by the West. They have imposed the most draconian sanctions on Russia that it had to turn towards China, which is a huge economic power, the second largest economy, the biggest manufacturing power. And they have had agreements on purchase of oil and gas. So there is a lot going on. And when Russia is deprived of so many things from the West, China, which produces many of those things, can easily supply them to Russia. So there is a logic in that relationship. It is true that because that relationship has got very solidified, Russia's relations with China today are stronger than Russia's relations with India, which was not the case in the past. However, Russia is a very self-confident and proud country, and Russia has not given any signs that it is being pushed or pressured by China to reduce its ties with India. Now, when Russia gives us very advanced defense equipment, going back to the nuclear submarines and S-400s and everything else, it's clear that China would have some views on this, because these things are going to be are a kind of a deterrent to China. But Russia is not influenced by these pressures, if there are any, and they are offering us even more advanced defense equipment, including their fifth-generation fighter or what have you. But yes, at the end of the day, in the Russia-India triangle, whereas the Russia-India part of the triangle in my time and subsequently for some years was stronger than the Russia-China part of the triangle, now the Russia-China part of the triangle is stronger than ours. So that does create a diplomatic challenge for us. But we are managing well because we are maintaining our very close ties with Russia. And now we have made some kind of an opening with China as a result of our own desire to have an independent policy towards China and not be part of the US policy towards China. And of course, most recently, I think Trump's extremely erratic and unjustifiable policies towards India have forced India to explore a little more deeply some other options.
So the Prime Minister, in fact, said that SCO is all about security, cooperation and opportunity. Do you feel that it's the opportunity part for India and Russia and countries like Iran is the one that stands out the most, considering the fact that that is exactly what has irked the Americans, that there is another forum which is trying to de-dollarize, there's another forum that's trying to do business with each other and not involve the dollar?
I think we should be clear-headed about this. India-China relationship is not going to be pushed or its scope enlarged because we are members of the SCO. India-China relationship stands on its own, and its dynamics are such that the SCO doesn't play that much of a role in this. This is true also of the India-Russia relationship. It is independent of the common platform we have in the SCO, and its dynamics will develop according to the choices India and Russia make bilaterally. With Iran, it's the same thing. Now, what happens in the SCO? There are three things. One is that it gives you an opportunity, a platform to engage at one place with a whole host of leaders of countries with which we would like to have a continuous dialogue and expand our relationship. So it is very difficult, for example, Modi to make a bilateral visit to Iran. But when he is in the SCO, he can meet Pashinyan and they can have a discussion on their bilateral relations. Similarly with the Central Asian countries, we have an independent line to them, but this gives us an opportunity to also interact with them. Now, we've got an opportunity, as for example, to have a meeting with Putin. And it's remarkable that Putin and Prime Minister spent so much time together in the car, where obviously some very sensitive issues were discussed, and Putin wanted to make sure that there was no eavesdropping by anybody on what they were talking about, followed by a proper discussion between the two leaders and their delegations. Similarly, SCO gave Prime Minister the opportunity to go to China and engage directly, once again, with Xi Jinping and have an exchange on the various issues that are there in our ties. So it's a good platform for India to act on. Now, there is, of course, the larger global agenda that all the participants address, because each of them has his own concerns about where the world is going. For example, the WTO, the collapse of the international economic order, America's bullying, etc., etc. They're all interested also in the Ukraine conflict and where it is headed. Now here, they can have an exchange of views and get a feel of what these countries, assess the situation and what their own thinking and recommendations are. These are good inputs for a country like India, which wants to, and which is taking the leadership of the Global South in some senses, to be able to be a voice of the Global South in terms of developing an agenda which, based on multipolarity, etc., and trading in our national currencies and some strengths that India has, which we want to be able to make available to many countries in the Global South, etc., etc. So that way, member of the SCO is a good thing.
So do you also think that this is perhaps a major diplomatic victory for India as well, since terrorism and double standards and hypocrisy by Pakistan has been called out, and also putting into light the fact that it has been China for the most part at the UNSC that has decried India's call for pulling up Pakistan when it comes to terrorism?
Well, a couple of things here. One, that the SCO, the origin is in the combat against terrorism. That was the raison d'etre of the SCO. So therefore, if SCO doesn't take a very strong position on terrorism, which is a big concern for all countries, mind you, the Central Asian countries have been very worried about the impact of the growth of radicalization and terrorism in the Afghanistan-Pakistan region on their societies. They have been raising these concerns. China is very worried about the Uyghurs who have safe havens in this part of the region, of AFPAC region. India, of course, has long-standing, decades-old concerns about Pakistan's involvement in terrorism. Russia is very afraid of destabilization internally through Islamic terrorism, because southern part of Russia, the Caucasus region, is very prone to this and is very vulnerable. And Russia also doesn't want terrorism to impact it through Central Asia with terrorism and this ISIS, Khorasan or whatever, their activities spilling over from Central Asia into Russia. Russia has had experience that during the Cold War and subsequently, US and others have tried to hit at the soft underbelly of Russia, as they say, through Central Asia by promoting jihad and everything else. So there is a common interest. Now, the second is that at the defense ministers meeting of the SCO, since they did not want to mention Pahalgam, they wanted to mention Balochistan, our defense minister refused to sign the document. So I think this time the Chinese wanted to make sure and others wanted to make sure that this doesn't happen. So they have therefore reflected these concerns about terrorism and the Pahalgam and everything else. And certainly this is a point of pressure on Pakistan, and Shahbaz Sharif is there, and he should draw some lesson from this. But their argument is, and they will make this argument, that what is the proof that there was involvement of Pakistan? And Chinese commentators also take the same line, that you can't condemn a country without being sure that the particular act of terrorism emanated from that country, and they're not going to give up that position. They didn't want to actually spoil the party in the SCO by seeming to defend Pakistan. But I think their basic position will not change. But on the other hand, getting this into the SCO statement and everything else is a win for us, definitely.
Ambassador Sibal, always a pleasure speaking to you, sir. Thank you so much for taking out the time and sharing your perspective, sir.